Hello everybody, Scotia here with the latest chapter review for the latest chapter of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 9 The JoJoLands. So we are finally here, chapter 12. It has been just a couple days over a year since the JoJoLands Part 9 started. It was February 17th, 2023, and at the time that I'm recording this it is February 18th, 2024. So yeah, literally just a year and a day since this all began, since I started doing these monthly reviews. And yeah, it's crazy how quick it's come. Like, I've always said in these reviews leading up to this chapter, it's crazy how far we've come in the chapters since that time. But at the same time, it doesn't feel like, it does not feel like it's been that long. Time is a weird thing. It feels like Made in Heaven, I guess, has been affecting us all in the year since part 9 started. But of course, you may have noticed in the title of this video and maybe the description, it depends, I haven't thought about what I'm going to put in the description yet, but I'm not going to go too far into it now because I would rather get the chapter review out of the way before discussing that. But just for now, don't worry, this isn't the last JoJoLands video you'll see on this channel. If you're somebody who is always watch these videos and watch them every month as I put them out, which if you're one of those people, thank you, I really do appreciate it. But yeah, I'm just going to save it for the end of the video, so wait for then to find out how I'm going to be doing things properly. But without further ado, let's just begin the chapter review, and this is part 9 JoJoLands, chapter 12. His name is Charmingman. So we start off the chapter with a bit of a kind of factual deep dive like Araki tends to do sometimes, which I always like these little factual kind of info dumps. I always think they're very interesting. You always learn something. We focus on one island in particular in Hawaii that has a active volcano, and the main bit of info we get here is that on this volcano there is no river that flows on the island. It's not a place that has natural flowing water, because I think it says later on that all of the rainfall is absorbed by the rocks or whatever. But after that we jump to two people who are sort of BMXing, mountain biking, whatever you want to call it. They're sort of racing each other on this active volcano, and you quickly find out that one of these people is the lava rock owner, who obviously we will get introduced to in this chapter. We already know what his name is, but I'll save it for when the name is eventually dropped. So we have the lava rock owner, but we also get introduced to what appears to be his younger brother, who I believe is named Mauka. I don't know if that's correct pronunciation. I completely apologize if I absolutely butchered that. But regardless, this is clearly a flashback of the lava rock owner's past. So I think at this point it's very clear that this is going to be a character that at the very least is going to be recurring throughout this part. So the lava rock owner and his brother are kind of cycling through the mountains, and they're jumping over all these tree stumps, and they're talking about, we're going to do triathlons and stuff like this. But then he turns around to see that his brother is completely gone. His bike is there and his shoe is stuck to his bike, which is obviously very confusing. He basically gets off the bike and is calling out for his brother and can't find him. But then as he's climbing down the volcano, he sees a kind of gap in the rock, which I've heard is called a lava tube. I've never really heard it. It's just basically just seems like a cave that is formed in volcanoes by lava in the past, so it's like a little hollow tube. I don't know. But what's weird is that it seems like there's flowing water inside this tube, which we found out from the info dump at the start, that there shouldn't really be any flowing water on this mountain because it's an active volcano. There shouldn't be any flowing water. So that's straight away something that's just very peculiar about this thing. But as the lava rock owner looks inside the lava tube to see his brother quickly is swept away by whatever current is inside this lava tube, and his brother is gone. And that's where the flashback ends, as we then jump to the present day, where we see Dragona and Usagi at the airport as they are about to leave and go back home. And we see Dragona and Usagi trying to find gifts for Dragona's mother, and Usagi's like, oh, try this coffee or these nuts, and that's when we find out that Barbara Ann Joestar apparently has a nut allergy. So a neat little factoid for all the Barbara Ann fans out there. And then we get what is easily my favourite scene in the whole chapter, as we get the lava rock owner and Jodio just sitting opposite each other in the airport, just looking awkwardly at each other in silence. And I thought this was just really funny, and this is really just fitting the overall kind of almost deadpan comedy vibe, near sitcom level that Araki has been doing in this part so far. Or just things being really awkwardly funny. And the whole thing of the last chapter, the last time we saw these characters, Jodio and the lava rock owner were trying to kill each other. They both plummeted to the bottom of the water at the beach. The lava rock owner had a knife or a broken knife at Jodio's throat, and Jodio was trying to drown him out. And then that's when obviously Paco was like, we should try and get this guy on our side. And then the next chapter, it's that whole thing happened. Apparently they got out of the water, they talked, and this guy has decided to join up with us. And yeah, I do get why some people are upset that we didn't see that. I think I think we wouldn't have hurt, you know, to have seen that. I think we wouldn't have lost anything. I don't think we would have wasted any time. I've seen people say, like, oh, you know, we didn't need to waste time, you know, seeing that scene play out and seeing, you know, how the lava rock owner pulled out of the water, and then him agreeing, like him being pitched the idea to join the group, and then him agreeing, and then getting to this point. You know, did we need to see it? I guess not, because we didn't see it. Would it have been nice to have seen it? Of course, you know, I'll always, you know, desire more scenes that let us explore the characters and the dynamics and how they interact with each other. But you know, I think this was funny. I think this fits with the vibes that kind of Araki has been going for, or the kind of comedic sense that he's been going for, where you will often get scenes like this in sitcoms and stuff like that, where two characters will be fighting, or they'll be in a confrontation, and then it'll just be like a hard cut, and you know, the confrontation's over, it's already been settled, they're kind of like sitting next to each other, or you know, awkwardly, whatever. You know, it's a very common thing, and I haven't seen Breaking Bad. I've already heard that this Breaking Bad references already happened earlier in this part, but from what I've heard, like, that's a thing that also happens in Breaking Bad, you know, which again doesn't surprise me. So yeah, like, I'm not totally a fan of this happening. I mean, I think it was funny, and the reactions to it have been funny to see. Would it have been nice to have seen that happen and kind of like help bridge these two chapters better together? Yeah, of course, but you know, I think the way it's panned out is fine. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with it. You know, it just is what it is. This scene continues to be hilarious, however, as Jojo then asks the lava rock owner what music he's been listening to lately, and the lava rock owner tells Jojo that he's been listening to Sia, Her, and SZA. So, you know, more modern music references, which is still, you know, just really weird to see in Jojo for some reason. I don't know, like, I've been so used to, like, Born This Way and, like, Lady Gaga being the most modern music references. But yeah, it's just really nice to already see the lava rock owner and Jojo just kind of bonding in this really weird way. I think that's something that Jojo has really excelled at, is that, like, in terms of traditional friendships, Jojo is not somebody who really excels at that. Like, you know, Usagi has offered, you know, a traditional friendship to Jojo in the past, and Jojo's been like, I don't care, I'm not bothered. But then you get moments like this where Jojo is, you know, bonding with people in really weird ways that you just wouldn't normally expect, like, normal people to do. Like asking the guy who was just trying to kill you, like, however many hours ago, you know, just asking them, oh, what music do you like? I don't know, it's just so interesting. It's so JoJo as well, but it's just, you know, like, in a way, it's a good insight into JoJo as a character. Like, I still am just so fascinated by this character, and just the way he interacts with people. It's that thing where I kind of feel like, because we've had the group kind of so solid as their dynamics, like, sold to us so early, I feel like we haven't really had, like, a good deep dive into how Jojo interacts with people for so long now. You know, maybe I'm wrong, but, like, it feels like it's been at least, like, inside Rohan's villa that we've actually got, like, a good glimpse into, like, you know, this side of Jojo, the kind of teenager side of him, which we don't really see. So, you know, yeah, I just thought this was a really nice scene. It was funny, and just, you know, but it had its good insights here and there as well. Paco then shows up and rightfully asks Jojo what the hell he's doing, like, why are you asking this guy about music, ask him who he is, what the lava rock's about, like, what does he know? And then we finally get the reveal of what this guy's name is, and the lava rock owner's name is apparently Charmingman. So when I first heard that this guy's name is Charmingman, I didn't really know what to think straight away. I think my first immediate thought was like, that's dumb as hell, like, this is a stupid name, I don't want to have to keep saying Charmingman for however many chapters or pages that he's involved in. But then I kind of thought about it, and then I was like, you know, it is kind of unique, and obviously in the next panel below this, Jojo and Paco are like, that's a dumb name, which is rare for Jojo to acknowledge that the names are dumb. But then I heard that the name Charmingman is actually a reference to a Smiths song, and I'm not like super familiar with the Smiths. Obviously I have heard of them, they're a super famous band and all that, but I went and I looked up the song, and I don't do this often. I mean, I did do it for Wildcat Size when we first heard their names a few months ago, but I looked up the Smiths song, This Charming Man, and like, man, I've literally, since this chapter dropped, I've had that song on loop. Like, I love that song. Like, honestly, like, just hearing that song and then like reading into the lyrics, and obviously some of the lyrics actually match up with the flashback from earlier. Like, man, like, I love the song, I love this name now. Like, I'm totally fine with this name. I think, like, I'm super into it. I just, you know, like, just literally hearing that song and then just like completely recontextualized the whole name in my mind. I'm like, yeah, cool, Charming Man, awesome, love it. So yeah, it's just kind of crazy how like hearing the song can completely like recontextualize how you feel about it and make you just completely change your opinion on it from like hating it before to being like, no, I love the song now, I love the reference, absolutely, you know, 100% fine with it. So yeah, good song choice by Raki. You know, big thumbs up on my end. Like, really, 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 really good choice. So after Paco asks Charmingman what he wants with the rock in the first place, Charmingman starts talking about the volcano on the island and how, you know, normally there's not supposed to be any flowing water on there like rivers or something, because all the water that gets, you know, hit by it by the rain gets absorbed into the ground. But he tells them about how, you know, he saw the river flowing to the surface through the lava tube, and that, you know, the lava rock came out of the lava tube. And he doesn't reference his brother. Obviously I think he's keeping that, you know, close to his chest for now, but he does mention how, like, Rohan isn't his enemy, he just happened to find the lava rock himself, and obviously that caught the attention of, you know, Charmingman. So I'm going to really quickly go through this next part, because this is another thing that, like, I've kind of decided, like, I don't like these segments, to be honest, where, you know, Jigoro and Usagi kind of just get into a goofy situation involving the watch and the lava rock. You know, I mean, it started with the Diamond watch salesman, and then we had the whole thing with Leo, and now this guy, because they get approached by someone selling, like, watches, like stolen watches. And it's like, I don't want to complain about, you know, slow pacing, because I think so far the pacing of Part 9, like I've said a million times before this, has been really good. We know this is like the third time now, like, we get this segment that gets thrown into the middle of these chapters that involves Jigoro and Usagi, and, like, and I'll be completely honest, like, they carry it, like, they carry these segments, because normally, like, if they weren't involved in it, I wouldn't give a shit about any of them, but, like, I like the dynamic between Jigoro and Usagi, I like their relationship, like I said in the previous review. I hope it keeps going further and further, but these, like, random offshoots that involve, like, the watch coming back to them, and like I said, the stuff with the salesman and Leo, and now this guy, like, I don't know, like, it's a recurring gag, and, like, I know I shouldn't really be complaining about, you know, slowing down parts, because, like, the pacing's been so good, but I just don't care. And, like, they always just end the same way, with them either getting the watch or losing the watch, and it's just like, I don't know, I'm just so over it. But yeah, anyway, they managed to trick the guy into selling them the watch for only $30, because the watch comes back, but obviously because it got knocked into the ocean during the whole, you know, end of the fight in the last chapter, like, it's been damaged, it smells like fish, you can tell it's been, and they basically just trick the guy who's selling the watch into thinking it's worthless. And then after that, they start going through customs, and obviously I thought this was a funny shot here, where you see, like, all the stuff they stole from Rohan's villa, like what's it called? The Heaven's Door drawing, and the bottle of wine and all that. And obviously I think it's funny here when Jigoro is going through customs, and, like, they have to search their like headdress thing, and then that's when Charmingman's like, hang on, am I coming with you as well? And obviously Paco's like, well, yeah, if you want to keep investigating this lava rock with us, then, you know, of course you're coming with us. We then get a very interesting bit of dialogue here between Charmingman and Jojo, where Charmingman just flat out asks Jojo, like, are you intending to get rich from this lava rock? Because if you are, like, it's not going to happen. And then he has an interesting line here at the end where he says, like, you'll understand what I mean when people start dropping out. And obviously, you know, characters dropping out of, you know, the main journey hasn't been a thing that's, like, never happened before. Obviously the most probably memorable one is Fugo in Part 5. I don't know if they'll do it again, because I feel like people still kind of, like, blame Fugo, and obviously have resentment towards Fugo for that. And obviously some people, I mean, I like Fugo a lot, he's probably honestly one of my favourite characters from Part 5. But, you know, it is kind of harsh to get a character who just at some point is just like, you know what, forget all the development, forget all the fights, forget everything, all the screen time I could get from this, like, I'm out, I'm gone. And obviously Araki has talked in the past about something that he calls gravity, which he describes as a force which, you know, compels him to write and draw things that he normally wouldn't want to. And I think the most he's talked about this is probably the author's comments for a lot of Stone Ocean stuff, especially towards the end. So, you know, if you want to hear more about him talk about this, which I highly recommend you do, because it's honestly fascinating, you know, like, by all means, you know, go read those author's comments. But, you know, he's talked about something like gravity before, and obviously I think Part 5 is another part where you kind of feel the gravity of Araki's kind of work, or, you know, sometimes even in some cases, you know, him fighting against that gravity, because, you know, it's always the infamous story about Fugo, where, you know, Araki was originally intending to have Fugo betray the group and betray Bucciarati, and basically, you know, have to fight the group at some point, like he was going to side with Diavolo, and then Giorno was going to, you know, end up fighting Fugo and kill him. But then Araki was so, you know, I think he said in the past, like, he was in a dark place at the time, and he was so just kind of, like, disgusted, and just so, like, he just couldn't stomach the idea of, like, someone that close to Bucciarati betraying him, so he ended up changing it to Fugo just, you know, dropping out of the journey altogether. I think that's an example of, you know, Araki fighting against the gravity of the part. Like, I think one time I heard someone talk about it on Twitter once, I can't remember who it was, but they said it really well, I think, because I remember there was one author's comment for JOJOLian near the end that had people kind of, like, laughing at it, where Araki said, like, you know, I hope, you know, by the end of the story, like, Josuke and Yasuho end up being happy. And a lot of people were like, bro, you write it, like, you're the author, like, you can just write them to be happy. And it's like, yeah, of course he can, but at the same time, like, when Araki subscribes to this belief that he calls gravity, it's not so much, yo, he can just write it, it's like, sometimes Araki is carried by the force of where he thinks the story should just go, even if he doesn't agree with it or doesn't want to draw it. You know, it's just something he just has to do because he feels like doing anything else is just an insult or just not natural, you know. And I think that thing with Fugo is probably the best example of like him fighting against that, because like obviously I think the gravity of the story of part 5 was for that to happen, was for Fugo to betray the group and then end up being killed by Giorno. But he was just so like against that idea that he, you know, he was like, I can't do it. And could that happen here? I don't know. I don't want it to, because I like this group. You know, if there was anybody who would, you know, betray the group, and not so much betray the group, but just kind of like bow out for a while, if I had to guess, like maybe Usagi, but I feel like if Usagi does that, he'll end up coming back. I mean, he's already done that, so, you know, that is kind of, I get, you know, a bit kind of easy for me to say Usagi, because it's like, obviously, you know, like I said, he's already done that. But I don't know, it could be Paco, it could be Dragona. I still think there's going to be something with Dragona. Like, I don't know if they're going to fully betray Jodio, but like, obviously Rohan's message way back in like chapter, I don't know, 5 or 6 or whatever, when he told Jodio, you know, like, you know, be warned, like somebody in your group is going to betray you. I always felt like Dragona was probably the most likely, in all honesty, because it's the one I think Jodio would expect the least. But, you know, I don't think it's going to be a full form betrayal. I just think it's going to come a point where Dragona and Jodio clash a bit in terms of ideologies and what they want. I think Jodio is definitely going to be on a righteous path, and I think Dragona is going to be more kind of like, you know, I just want the money. And I think, yeah, I think they're going to clash over that. Obviously, I'm getting way too ahead here. This is like 3 years from now, you know, if we're lucky, that we'll get to this type of stuff. But, you know, it's just this topic here, like, you know, Charmingman talking about people dropping out and the idea of, you know, people just kind of like leaving the group and just being like, I'm out of this is too much. You know, it's made me think like, who would do that in this group at the moment? And I think my honest 2 bets, I think are honestly it's either Usagi or Dragona. I mean, who knows, like, Dragona could drop out and kind of form their own party, and Usagi could go with them. Personally, I think Paco, I think at this point, honestly, Paco, I think is a ride or die with Jodio. I think he's absolutely going to be one of the most loyal people to Jodio, because I think at this point, that seems the least likely thing to happen, but at the same time, like, I can see it. I think they make a good, you know, kind of like duo together. And yeah, I just think Paco is just a very honourable guy. I think obviously he doesn't have any massive affection towards Jodio, but at the same time it's like you can tell that they're a bit close. I can sense a kind of like friendly brotherhood type thing going on. Charmingman, I don't know. I think he'll be loyal. I think it'll probably appear a couple times throughout this part that he's going to betray them, but he's not going to. I think personally, my gut tells me, I think if I had to guess, I would say Charmingman's probably going to die before we get to like the point of betrayals, if that makes sense. Like, I think this point in the story, I would easily say Charmingman is probably going to be the first one to die. But like I said, that's years away before we get to that stuff, so, you know, I'm getting way ahead of myself here. We then jump to another flashback that is a continuation of the first flashback, as Charmingman is basically arguing with the police, who have basically just already given up the search for his brother. They don't care, they're already leaving. Man, like, this guy that Charmingman talks to is a piece of shit. Like, he openly is like, you know, I don't care about your brother's probably, you know, off somewhere, like, with a girl, like, I don't give a shit if you think he's missing. Like, hell, if he is missing, you're probably the first suspect, because I've got police records of you arguing with him and being stopped in a traffic violation. Like, you know, you're the first person I'm arresting if it does turn out your brother's missing. So there is one thing about this flashback in particular that's pretty interesting, and it's when the cop is, you know, telling Charmingman, like, oh, didn't you get arrested or something for, you know, resisting arrest at a traffic stop or something. And Charmingman tells him, like, oh no, that only happens because the police officer touched my skin. He's like, oh, I have a skin, you know, I have a physical disposition where my skin, you know, is rough like sand. And obviously everybody's gone like apeshit about this, because for quite a few chapters now, pretty much ever since he first like showed himself after he disguised himself as Paco, it's been a very common fan theory that this guy is a rock human. And, you know, I myself believed it at one point. I don't necessarily disbelieve it now because of this. A lot of people have been like, oh, you know, it was just a troll by Iraqi. And, like, you know what, it very well could have been. I certainly believe it, but I don't think it like flat out disproves it or anything. I think if anything, like, I've heard some good theories about this, to be honest. I've heard people say that, you know, he might be a half rock human, because I believe in one of the JOJOLands chapters where they, you know, the chapter where they have like the big kind of like explanation, like info dump on how the rock humans work, there's a line where they say something about like there's been examples in the past of like men procreating with female rock humans but not the reverse. So you know, it's perfectly possible that Charmingman has a human father and a rock human mother. I mean, as far as we know, we've never seen a hybrid, so I mean, this could just be a side effect of being half, you know, human, half rock human, you know, like having the sand coarse, you know, skin. You know, it's still interesting. Like I said, I don't think it disproves him being a rock human. I don't think it proves him being a rock human. I just think, you know, it's another piece of the puzzle that, you know, we'll either find out sometime down the line that he's a rock human, or if he's not a rock human, he'll probably just never get mentioned again. So, you know, we'll just have to see. So after Charmingman is left alone by the police to kind of just like lament that his brother is more than likely gone, he sees Rohan dropping money on the ground and then, you know, picking up a lava rock from underneath the money and like adding it to his collection. So what's interesting here is that obviously like Rohan didn't just stumble across the lava rocks, like he knew that they were a thing. I mean, I think this was obvious because I think, you know, I remember back in the villa when Jodio goes into a room, I think it's Jodio, or maybe it was Dragona and the others, but somebody goes into a room and like there's tons of pictures and diagrams and stuff like that of all these lava rocks. So I think at this point it's pretty much confirmed that Rohan was, you know, intentionally investigating these lava rocks, you know, trying to discover what was going on with them. That of course raises the question of like, you know, why is Rohan doing this? What convinced him to? What is his purpose? What is his goal? How did he hear about it? And you know, I've said it before, I think in earlier chapter reviews, but you know, I would love it if this ends up, you know, being the bridge into Josuke, you know, showing up in this part. Because man, I really hope we see Josuke in part 9. Because I don't know man, it feels like it's been so long now since we've had like a previous JoJo show up in the current part. I think probably it was part 6, you know, like with Jotaro. And even then, like the last time we had like the previous JoJo show up in the next part was like part 4 with Jotaro again showing up and, you know, meeting Josuke. So it's been a while, and like I think Josuke part 8 is a perfect character to come in and like obviously get involved in what's going on. Like the way we left him was, I wouldn't say unsatisfying, but it was a bit kind of mucky. I think it wasn't a clean ending to JoJolian. I think most people would probably agree with that. I mean, the ending itself made sense, but how we got there was a bit messy. So, you know, I would love it if Josuke came back. I think at this point, I mean, the most common number of like characters that, you know, Araki usually has in like a main Joestar party is about 6, and we're on 5 at the moment now that Charmingman's joined. So, you know, I think if we were to ever get a 6th, I would really love it if it was Josuke, like Josuke joined the group and like we get that kind of like old JoJo from the previous part coming in with the experience and kind of like, you know, being a kind of guiding figure for, you know, these new JoJos, these new Joestars. I don't know, I think it'd be awesome. I really hope it happens. It's been long overdue. I would love it if we got more of Josuke. I really like Josuke a lot. He's not my favorite JoJo, but he's a really cool character, you know, and I think he deserves to come back. I think there's absolutely no reason why. Obviously, like Johnny and Josuke, like obviously they didn't meet up for very obvious reasons. I don't think I even need to explain that. But yeah, I just, you know, I do hope that that ends up happening, and I think, you know, it'd be interesting if you could maybe do it where it's like, you know, Josuke and Rohan, they know each other. You know, Rohan got sent to Hawaii by Josuke maybe, and then obviously, you know, later on when Rohan shows up again, maybe Josuke's with him, and then that's how that happens. I don't know, I'm just spitballing here. It will more than likely not go that way at all. I mean, we may never even see Josuke again, which would be a huge bummer. But, you know, until it happens, I'm just going to be holding out that hope that, you know, Josuke eventually comes back. We then get into the final pages of this chapter here as we finally see Meryl Mei-Chi again, which has been a while. It's been a year, like she hasn't been seen since chapter 1. So like I said at the start of the video, like a year and a day, you know, like it's been a long time. But after 11 chapters and after a year, we have finally returned back to home base, which is crazy to think about, like reading chapter 1 like a year ago and just being like, you know, that setup of like, oh, you know, we never could have been prepared for everything that happened at the villa, to now finally be back, you know, at Meryl to finally hand it back over the diamond. Like, it's crazy. Like, this is like pretty much the first like major like arc of, you know, this part is pretty much finished now. So, you know, pretty crazy. So yeah, anyway, they finally report back to Meryl. They give her the diamond. She's obviously pleased with it, but then she kind of like starts, you know, quizzing them on, you know, like what actually happened out there, because you were gone for like 6 hours. And Meryl is like, I used all of my sources, like I have, you know, people everywhere that report back to me, and I never heard anything about a heist going down. So like, you weren't, you know, in trouble, you didn't get caught. So it's like, what were you doing for 6 hours? Like, you should have been back way earlier if you got in and out without any trouble. And all this quizzing eventually leads to Dragona admitting to Meryl that, you know, like something did happen out there, but you know, it's easier to show you than explain it. And that's when, you know, they point down. And that's when Meryl notices that the diamond she put away in the safe behind her is now back on the table. So obviously the power of the lava rock is now, you know, happening again, and they're about to, you know, explain to Meryl what's been going on. And then on the final page here, they reveal that, you know, they found something, they found the lava rock, and that they also found a friend, and then it cuts to Charmingman sat outside waiting for them to finish. And it's at this time where Meryl stops Dragona and is like, you know what, let's stop here and let's talk about it and think about it, because this is very interesting now. And then that's where we leave things. That's the cliffhanger. It is, what is Meryl's idea? So now Meryl is getting involved in what's going on with the lava rock. And I don't really trust Meryl. I don't think I have done since the first chapter. I've heard some people say she could be the main villain. I don't know, I'm not against it. I think it'd be very interesting if she ended up being the main villain. I definitely get, was it Polpo? Is that Popo or Polpo? I think it was Polpo from part 5, the fat gangster who's in prison, who sends Giorno on the job to do the lighter in order to get into Passione. That's kind of the feeling I get from Meryl in terms of like her role in the story. Like she's the bigger criminal who kind of like is kind of the gateway into the wider criminal world. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes. I think if I had to guess, I would maybe kind of think she could be like the next major fight. Maybe it could be the main 4 plus Charmingman against Meryl. I don't know, it could go anywhere. Meryl could send them on another job, and then when that job's done they may come back and Meryl may turn on them. There's quite a lot of directions they could go at this point, which is quite interesting, because for so long now we've had this direct goal of like, gotta get the diamond, gotta get it back to Meryl. And obviously we've had a lot of diversions. We had the cats, we had Rohan, and we had Charmingman. So for quite a while now we've been in a place of like, okay, gotta get the diamond, gotta get to Meryl, gotta get the diamond, gotta get to Meryl. And now we're in a spot for the first time in like a year where it's like, you know what, now it's kind of open. Like we don't know where this is gonna go. We don't know what the goal is. We don't know where the next location is. Are we gonna go back to the villa? Are we going to the city? Are we going to the volcano? Could go anywhere. So yeah, that was the chapter. So I'll kind of give my wrapping, closing thoughts now, and then I will explain how the rest of these reviews are going to work. So yeah, overall, I really like this chapter. I thought there was a lot of good stuff here. We obviously got a lot of Charmingman, which was obviously, kind of obvious and kind of the point. But I think, I think Araki did well in this chapter to kind of, obviously sell us on Charmingman, sell him as part of the group, and obviously those early interactions. But also he used the flashbacks really well in this chapter to establish, a bit of his backstory and also his motivations. Like, why is he after the lava rock? Well, we know that it's pretty much to find out how he can get his brother back, through the lava rock and the lava tubes. And that's all we really need to know for now. So in that sense, I thought it was pretty, it was pretty well done. He made a good use of the panels and the pages that he had. But yeah, it was nice to get more of a kind of calmer and chiller chapter. There wasn't like a huge ton going on here. It's mostly just character stuff and kind of like character interactions, which is great, and it's what I prefer personally. So yeah, good stuff. Like I said earlier, like, would it have been nice to have kind of like more of a bridge between what happened at the end of the previous chapter and this one? Absolutely, I would have loved that. But I think this chapter works just fine without it. I appreciate it for kind of the weird deadpan sitcom comedy that it was, that Araki has been going for quite frequently in this part. But yeah, there's nothing much I can really say outside of what I've already talked about in this video. Like, it was a solid chapter. I'm a big fan of Charmingman already. Like I said earlier, wasn't keen on the name at first, but I got sold on it after I listened to the Smith song. And yeah, just good stuff. Like, I'm really liking this group, really liking this part. Like, crazy that's been a year already, but I honestly think like where we were like a year into JOJOLian, like it's not even comparable really. Like, I'm so much more into where JOJOLands is. I'm so much more into the characters, into the stands, in terms of where the plot is. One thing I hear often as a criticism though is that like, oh, the part feels aimless. It feels like we haven't really kicked off. Like, we don't really know what we're doing yet. And it's like, I don't know. I don't think that's a bad thing, because at the same time, it's like, I think the snappier pacing has helped kind of make that not feel as bad. Like, yeah, we knew early on in part 8, like, obviously, like, the main thing is finding out who Josuke is. But with part 9, obviously, the thing for now is, like, how is Jojo going to use this rock to get filthy rich? And, I think the premise of part 8 was a lot better. And I will fully admit, like, the first half of part 8 was the best part, in my opinion. I didn't like the second half when they were chasing the Lokakaka branch. But yeah, like, I think we're fine. Like, obviously, we're still a year in. And obviously, like, a year's a year, but, like, we're still really early in. Like, if this part ends up being, like, over 100 chapters again, like, we are, like, 9 years at least until we start getting until the end. So it's like, man, like, if you're getting like impatient now, like, buckle in, because you've got years before we start actually getting to like the real meat and potatoes of what the whole point of this part is. Because if you think about it, like, if you count like the second half in terms of like, like I said, chasing the branch, chasing the fruit, trying to heal Holly, like, man, I don't think any of that in JOJOLian start getting established until like, I want to say halfway through. So like maybe 4 or 5 years in. So, like, we got a while yet before we start getting there. which I'm fine with. I mean, like, 10 years is 10 years. I can't make it go any faster. I just hope Araki's health is good enough. I hope, he's happy enough and he's not, he's healthy enough to keep doing it and to finish this part. That's my only real wish, I hope he keeps himself good. I hope, he's well looked after, he takes care of himself, he doesn't stress himself, he doesn't overwork himself. And I hope he just keeps himself healthy and he's able to finish this part. That's my only real wish, I guess. But yeah, so that's the review for today. So where do we go from here? Like I said, the title of the video you'll have noticed says final monthly review. So I'll kind of just get out front now with it and say, like, yeah, this is the last monthly review that I'm doing. Obviously, I said ages ago, like back in like January of 2023, before I even started doing the JOJOLands reviews, I said that I wanted to do at least a year of these reviews. I wanted to do at least 12 chapters, because then that was at least a year. And I did it. Obviously, because I'm here and you're listening to this now, but like, yeah, I'm happy with that. I wanted to cover JOJOLands on the channel. I covered JOJOLands on the channel. I never once thought I was going to be doing this for 10 years, like monthly or however long, for all the hiatuses, no doubt he's going to take. But like, yeah, I never once for a second thought I was going to do this for, for 10 years. I mean, hell, I didn't even think I was going to do this for a year. I mean, there's been plenty of times in the build-up in the last 12 months where I've like considered stopping. I think it was like chapter 6 was the first time where I was like, do you guys actually want me to do this? But you know what, like I said, it's my channel at the end of the day, it's my choice, and I think, there's lots of reasons why, but I think the main one is that, like, I kind of want to use these monthly, like, I want to use the slot that I usually do for these monthly reviews. I just want to do something else with it. I would rather put that time in towards doing other topics, doing other reviews for other things, for other games, for other stuff like that. Like, I would rather use that time to make other videos. And I've enjoyed making these videos, I've enjoyed covering JOJOLands, but I think there has to come a time where I kind of have to look at the bigger picture and go, like, is it worth doing this, monthly? And at this point, I would say no, I don't think it's worth doing it monthly. I think, for the people that watch all of these every month, you have my utmost thanks. I am so appreciative and so grateful that, you've been willing to put up with listening to me waffle about this for a year now. But I think there comes a time where you kind of have to just go, you know what, it's time. And I think it's time. But at the same time, I don't want this to be the end of JOJOLands on this channel. I don't just want to go, right, it's been a year, I'm never talking about this again. Of course I want to talk about this again. Of course I want to keep talking about JOJOLands because I'm enjoying it. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start doing these reviews by volumes. So if my math is correct, this is chapter 12 obviously, so this chapter should be the last chapter of volume 3. So I think the next time I will do a JOJOLands video will be for volume 4, which is probably going to be a few months. Because I think volume 3 comes out in April, and obviously like that'll cover up to chapter 12, which is what I've done now. So if I do volume 4, I will cover the next 4 chapters that I will be in volume 4, which will be chapters 13, 14, 15 and 16. So I will do one longer video whenever like volume 4 comes out, and I will do a review of those 4 chapters. And then when that's done, I'll do chapter 5 and then chapter 6 and so on and so forth. So the videos and the reviews on JOJOLands are going to be, the gap between them is going to be a lot longer now, but they're going to be much longer videos, to compensate for that. And I think in that way, I think it'll just work out better. I think, I'll have more room to talk about them. Like, instead of just doing these one monthly videos, like, I'll be able to kind of sit on things a bit longer and kind of like use kind of different opinions. Obviously, I think at the end of the day, you can't beat a kind of like here and now opinion, because if, say, for example, I didn't do this review until chapter 13 came out, then what happens in chapter 13 will kind of like affect my opinion on what happens in chapter 12. And at the end of the day, I would rather avoid that, but I think in the long run, just to do something different but while still also covering JOJOLands, I think I'm at least going to give it a go. I'm going to wait until volume 4, and then if I'll see how volume 4 goes. If I do the video on volume 4 and I just don't like it, then I'll either think about going back to monthly, or I'll just stop doing JOJOLands at all. But that's a bridge that we'll cross when we get to it. But for now, I'm going to leave things here. Thank you all so much for watching. Even if this is the only one you've ever watched, I'm still grateful. But if you're somebody who has been watching all these chapter reviews since, February last year, I really can't thank you enough. I really appreciate you sticking with them and sticking with me waffling about them. It really, really, really does mean a lot. So yeah, this isn't goodbye, I will 100%, talk about JOJOLands on this channel again, but for now, this will be the last time you see or hear me talking about JOJOLands every month. I'm sorry if, that bums you out, if you were looking forward to them, if you were a big fan of, watching these and listening to these every month. But like I said earlier, I think, every now and then you kind of have to just accept that things need changing. And I think this is one of those things on this channel that needs changing. But at the end of the day, I'm glad I stuck it out for a year. That was always, the base level I wanted. I wanted to at least always do these for a year and then go from there. And, a year's a year, and it's been a long time. And, I'm happy that I even did it. I'm happy I stuck with it. Because I was going to do, Stone Ocean reviews as well, but then, Netflix fucked up that release, and I just didn't want to do that anymore. So, I could have stopped doing these at any point, because some of these have not done well view-wise, obviously. I'm not that focused on views, but I still use them as a barometer to see if people are actually watching and liking what I put out. And I think the last JOJOLands review I did was I think for chapter 11, that got 66 views or something, which is bad. At this point, for 10,000 subscribers that I have, it's pretty obvious that people aren't coming to this channel to watch JOJOLands reviews, which is fine. I have no problem with that. But it was a passion project. It was something I enjoyed doing. It was something I wanted to do. But this is the new thing I want to do now. I want to keep doing JOJOLands, but just doing a different format that allows me to, spend more time working on other things. So, yeah. I've waffled on for long enough now. I shall see you for Volume 4, which will be more than likely, June, July at this rate. So, yeah, it'll be a long time, but I think a break will do all of us a bit of good. I'm still going to be reading the chapters as they come out, but I'll just save all my thoughts and my reviews for them, in one video as they come out in a volume. If you want to still see my opinions at the time, I don't think I'll ever post anything about it on Twitter, because I just don't think my followers on Twitter are really JoJo followers. But sometimes I'll post in the Reddit threads, on r/JOJOLands and r/Stardust Crusaders are the main two subs, I think, where I see the most JOJOLands discussions every chapter that comes out. So you may see me on there if you want to look there and see if I post a specific thought. I didn't this month because there wasn't really anything that jumped out at me that I wanted to talk about. But yeah, I'll leave things here. Thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And until the next time we see each other again, whatever that may be, thank you and goodbye.
We await your return, warrior.